Well, it's November 10th, about 3:45 p.m. We're getting a late start. I went on a walk today, or more like what I call a hike. It's about 76 Fahrenheit. So first I wanted to start off with, usually sometimes when I start the day, I'll have lunch and I'll switch it over to the Daily Woo because, well, it's kind of like news in a way that's not really always, I guess you could say, politically important news, maybe something that's going on at an abandoned structure or a filming location or something. But to me, it seems like it's important because it reveals something very important that I want to talk about today on November 10th of 2021. I think ultimately what YouTube reveals is freedom. So if you have your own channel, you're expressing what it's like to be free. I lost my freedom just the other day because of an unpaid, not parking ticket, I'm sorry, it was a school zone ticket. And I thought this online lawyer company, which I've used before, it wasn't an online service, but I've used a service that was out of Fort Worth to fight a ticket and I actually won, and they had it dismissed. I thought it was going to go through that whole procedure. Little did I know, after the police officer pulled me over, that I'd lose my freedom that day, and I spent roughly 6 hours in jail until an anonymous person paid the ticket and they released me. I didn't know exactly what was going to happen to me at that moment. I thought that was it. And I wanted to talk about some of the things I thought about when I was in jail. The first thing I did when I got to the main cell in Keller Jail was I made a lot of phone calls, as many as they allowed me to make. And I got to take my hat off to the people at Keller Jail because they made it as kind and I would say even Christian as they could by probably allowing me to make those calls that I needed to make, which they didn't have to do. And I see that as probably a sign of police reform, which I think some of what this show is about too. The law is part of this show. It's not what the show is, but it's my life, and we live we live in a world that acknowledges law every day. So I had to go through that, and I got out, and then I realized, that was a beautiful thing, freedom. Let me go back to the main cell where the phones were and the silver tables, and I'm trying to write about this too. But right now I'm vlogging about it. And there was a pile of books on a silver table, and in the books there was a Bible. And it was small print, so I went to it and I read the first part of Genesis, and then eventually skipped to Corinthians, the first opening of Corinthians. Paul was many things. Apostle Paul. Starting off, he was a Jewish man that lived by Jewish law and also a Roman citizen. And he was in and out of prison, or he's in and out of jail a lot of his life. They even kind of saw it as a superstitious thing because Paul would go into jail and all of a sudden he'd be free again. And there was finally a time where they decided to kill Paul, and they put him on house arrest. And they told him, Paul, you're going to die. We're basically going to cut your head off. This is real stuff. It's hard to listen to, but many churches talk about it. And they eventually did. Paul was not always a good man. I thought he was once called Saul, but he was an evil man at one time. And he persecuted Christians and persecuted Christ. And Christ finally decided to meet up with Paul. And a lightning bolt struck. We got some rain coming up ahead of us. And the lightning bolt struck and caused Saul, I guess at that time, to go blind and become Paul. Because Paul was on the road to Damascus. We all know this story. And Paul saw the image of Christ. And he heard a voice. And the voice said, Paul, why do you persecute me? Jesus, the ruler of all this, the ruler of all law, we should be in Christ, not in law. But the ruler of the universe talked to Paul, a man that was skilled in law, a Jewish man that knew the law, a man that knew what he could say to Roman guards to free him, a very intelligent man, but also very evil because he was going around holding the coats of certain Christians while they were stoned. He did that with Stephen. He held Stephen's coat as they stoned him to death. He persecuted Christians and even killed them, and that was wrong. Later, Paul would ask for forgiveness for this. Here, at this one moment on the road to Damascus, Jesus asked Paul a question. God, the ruler that created all things, asked this man a question. Why do you persecute me? I don't think Paul had an answer. But Paul was awakened by the beauty of Jesus Christ, and it changed his life. And he decided no more. He decided he would no longer be the Jewish man that he was, where he went around pointing fingers with the Pharisees and Sadducees and killing Christians. He decided to stop. I'm not saying anything anti-Semitic, but that's part of the Bible. Paul was known to be Jewish. I personally fall alongside with the Messianic Jews, that the Jews and Gentiles should be one under the blood of Messiah. And Paul eventually became this. He was a Jewish man that acknowledged the Gentiles, just like Christians should do. All Christians should acknowledge Jewish people, Gentiles, Greek, Asia, African, all nations are accepted under Christ. And Paul was no longer a persecutor of one nation. He was no longer a persecutor of the Christians, yet he became the Christian that wrote the New Testament. And onward he went until his last dying breath. And he said, my blood will be spilt out as an offering for Jesus Christ. That's what Paul said. He knew he was going to die. He also talked about a lot of genius things, especially in Corinthians. And one of the things that Paul came to realize as he was on house arrest and writing letters to the church, the Philippians church, I believe Ephesus was that represented Ephesians and all the other churches that are out there. There's many of them at that time. And he wrote these love letters to the churches to let them know that there was hope, that they could put their entire belief into Jesus Christ, and that they could go forward. Now, why I'm going all the way from Adam the Woo to talking about Jesus Christ and freedom is because I think, and I'm at 7 minutes, so I got to wrap it up, but I think that this is our time to not only worship, but to reveal the name of Christ and what we do. And that's part of the Please Subscribe show. Anyone can do it. But once you're awakened to the truth, which is Jesus Christ, you will believe in 3 promises. One of the promises that you will believe in is faith. It's a promise that will follow you along the walk of Christianity. Another promise that will follow you the entire time, and they'll be right by your side, is hope. That's a promise if you're a Christian. You will know faith and you will know hope. And there's a third thing that Paul talked about that's a promise that will follow you, and that's love. And that's the most powerful one. That's the one that will get you on your knees, because that's the embodiment of Jesus Christ, and that's what Jesus Christ is he's love, and he's more powerful than all our struggles and all the things that we complain about and try to understand. It's love. And me, being a big fan of King James Version, love transfers to charity, because we are to give our shirts to the brother that's in need. We're to take off our shirts. How many times have you taken your shirt off and given it to a brother that actually needed it? Probably never, right? One thing that I talked to Ricky about before I lost my wife and my family, I'm not saying that's going to always be the case. I believe that one day we'll be reunited. I don't know when that day will come. But one thing Ricky looked at me in the office when I was talking to him, because I went to many counsel sessions at MacArthur and talked about Jesus and the things that I needed to do to be a stronger person and to be a better husband to Angel and the kids. One thing he said, well, didn't Jesus ask us to give up everything? He asked us to give up everything and go on his adventure, to go on his walk. And nobody does that. Nobody at the church at the time had did that. I'm not saying that we're we're not Christians, but we're pampered Christians, and we're very blessed to be here and to have the things that we have. Jesus has really stuck his neck out for us over the past 2,000 years, and will continue to do that, not only because he died for you, but because he's the embodiment of love. So I'll go back to Adam the Woo. He hasn't posted in about a week. His father was a minister. There's a lot of birds right there. A lot of birds right in that one moment. And Hitchcock would be proud. His father was a minister. And I didn't know this because when I started off, my idea was probably somewhere in this. I was going to turn the switch and say, hey, I'm a Christian. I know I'm not perfect. Sometimes I talk about, Hollywood and all this other stuff, and I lose my path. But as I follow this punk rock guy that was a bass player for Guttermouth, and there's something in there that seemed structured, and like, what is this guy doing? He's starting a movement on YouTube, and all these other people are doing filming locations, and he goes down in his van. He has nothing but like a bag of chips and a drone and the Majestic, and inside the large Marge vehicle, eventually an RV, and he's going around. This is very Christian-like. He has nothing, and he's giving out this message of something, but he's not really, I don't know what you call it, torch of ministry. He's not real, I wouldn't say pious. He's not really to the point, and nor has he really ever said anything openly about Jesus Christ that I know from all thousands of his vlogs. I'm sure there's something there. He talks about churches and his dad being a minister and things like that. But I'm using the time now to, I guess, in a way, speak on top of a mountaintop and say that, listen, Jesus Christ is the answer to all this, and he will be the answer. He's the only freedom, no matter where you go. And Paul's proof of this. Remember, Paul wrote half the New Testament. He's pretty much the founder of Christianity. And Corinthians is an important one. Also, I go back to being in the jail. I did pick up a book, Nicholas Sparks' book called The Wedding. It's pretty good. And when I was reading it, his words are powerful, especially if you're in jail. He talks about his wife. He talks about his doubts he has in marriage and the wedding. I only got to the first part. I'm still reading the sample as I got out. I went back and I got the sample. I said, I better read this while I'm free. Another thing I want to say is, I don't know how long I'm going to keep my freedom. And I'm not complaining. Another thing I've learned is I listened very careful to all the sermons I got to go to in MacArthur, and I'm not downing that church at all. Just things didn't work out for Angel and I. But I remember Josh Smith talked many times in his sermons and said some many important things, and Corinthians was his favorite book of the Bible, if I'm not mistaken. That and the book of Noah. I'm joking. There's no book of Noah, but it's in closer to the Genesis times. He made a mistake one time. He said everybody turn to the book of Noah, but it's actually in the Genesis. His favorite is Corinthians. I was making an inside joke to the church. The one thing Josh said to me personally, not to me, but I felt like he was talking to me. He was talking to the body of the church. But he said, if I went into prison, or if I went in and I was in Paul's position, all I would do is complain and say things. I need this and I need that, and this is going wrong, and blah, blah, blah. I would not be as strong as Paul. I would not be as strong and just talk the message of Jesus Christ. I would not be that strong. And I know what he means. It just goes to show why Apostle Paul was one of our great apostles. He no longer had an identity. He was only Christ when he was there. Yes, they still called him Paul, but he thought and he believed and he knew he had Christ in him. He was Christ-like. Same with Peter. I'm not talking about Peter at that point. Peter also honored the Lord because he chose to be crucified upside down, so he would not appear to be as great as our one and only Messiah. Listen, we've advanced as Christians to the point where in some cases we're kind of spoiled. We don't have to be Roman candles anymore, quoting the songwriter Elliott Smith, which I probably shouldn't quote him, but one of his albums was called Roman Candle. That's where they burn Christians at the stake. They can't do this stuff to us anymore. I think it's because Christ has rewarded us for our attention that we give to him. And please, if you're a Christian and you have access to YouTube, don't let it go to waste. let other people know. Remember, Jesus is not going to return until more people know him. There'll be a time when more people will know him. He's waiting. He's a very patient Messiah. Okay, so I said a lot of things about Paul. I was talking about Jill, talked about Adam the Woo. He hadn't posted in a week. I don't know. I guess he's taking a break from things or assessing things, trying to figure out his next move. But ultimately, I know that we're all broken people, and we all have our different techniques and things that how we show hope and how we show these things, these faith and hope and love, how we show how we can go on. But I promise you, love will sustain us. I promise you. All right, that's 15 minutes. That's a show in itself. I'm going to go to the Speedway, and I'm going to show myself drop off some food at doorsteps. And I'm also eventually going to get online, and I'm going to start looking for teaching positions. I'm going to see if maybe I can find a position somewhere, maybe private or public, where I can maybe try to teach school. All right. Y'all have a good day. And I love you all. And please subscribe, and thanks for watching.